Hey everyone, it's Ben from the Social Snippet team here, and today I want to talk about how often you should release a podcast. This is a question that we get a lot from our podcasting clients. Um, you're thinking about a podcast, you already have a podcast, but you're not really sure how often you should release. Does it affect how well the podcast can grow, how fast it can grow, how quickly you can monetize it? It is definitely an important consideration when you are launching or relaunching a podcast to know how often am I going to post? Because yeah, it does affect the way that you can rank, how fast you can grow, but there are a couple different strategies to it. So, in short, to answer the question kind of right off the bat here, generally you should post and release a podcast as often as you can promote it well, which is kind of, hopefully not what you think is a cop out answer. But genuinely, if you can post a podcast every single day and you have bite sized content, you can show up really well that way. Your listeners can predict that they're going to be posting every single day and they will come back to the apps every single day if you continue to provide value, and they will listen every single day. You'll really rack up those downloads because you have so much content to consume, and that can really help you to monetize and grow faster. But if you're going to post every single day for a week and then you're going to go ghost for 3 weeks and then come back with a random episode, sure, you can promote it on social media, and that's something that I definitely would recommend. But in general, you're not really building that like consistent schedule where people can actually expect you and come to you for that kind of information. And that can be a bit of a problem. So consistency is key. If you have a day of the week where you have more time to promote a podcast, or to batch record it, that is an important consideration to be making when you're making these decisions. At the Social Snippet, we release podcasts, the community podcast, every Monday and Thursday. And those days are kind of strategically spaced out during the week, so people have a couple days to download them or over the weekend to catch up. But on Monday, we release typically our best content for the week. And that is because our newsletter goes out that day, and we can promote it there. We like to get on our stories that day. It's a day that we usually plan not to post other content. And Thursdays are similar. We make space in our content calendar and in our schedule to talk about our podcast and to show up well that way. Um, Maybe that day isn't Monday and Thursday for you. Maybe it's a Tuesday, Wednesday. Statistically speaking, Tuesdays and those kind of middle days of the week. So Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays are the best days for downloads because people aren't, busy doing other things, wrapping up their week, thinking about their weekend plans. They're kind of ready to consume content even in the evenings after work. But really, again, the best day to post a podcast and how often to release it as is how you can show up best. The platforms also really favor people who can show up consistent with with regular downloads. So if you like Apple and Spotify will prioritize you if they know that you are a reliable source of content for people. They don't want to be sending people to a black hole where there's two random episodes 2 years ago and there's nothing on the horizon. They want to push shows that they know are funneling people into their apps, that they're actually keeping people on, keeping their attention for longer, because that's how these apps are, succeeding and making money. Most podcasts actually don't make it past 5 episodes. So if you can even get consistent for, build into your routine for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, posting every week, you've already beaten the majority of podcasters who really come out hot out of the gates and don't really think about how they're going to batch their content, how they're going to find times to record consistently. And that can be a huge barrier for people. So by choosing a realistic schedule right out the gate for yourself, you can set yourself up for some pretty significant success and beating the odds on the podcasting front. So there are different posting schedules, and again, it all depends on how often you have, how often you can promote it, how often you can record. I would say that weekly, the Social Snippet at least, is the most popular schedule. It really balances quality and consistency, so you're not like pumping out something every single day, but you still have that consistent routine that you're building with your listeners. Bi-weekly is probably the second most popular that we do. That's 2 times a month, typically 2 to 3 times a month. And that is good for more like in-depth conversations, especially if your content's longer and people might need to listen to it in multiple sittings. That's a great option for you. Um, or if it's heavily edited and you kind of need more time for working with us. For example, we usually require 7 to 14 days on content turnaround, especially for those more manicured conversations. Monthly is really good for highly produced stuff or kind of documentary style things where you're gonna have to like piece together different types of recordings and stuff like that. Or if it's kind of more like a roundup on news, that you kind of need more things to kind of happen. If it's actually got fully news related topics or kind of in the moment or in case you missed it kind of things, some people do podcast daily, and that's a great way to really get in the ears of your people. Even more, build that into the daily routine, which is even better obviously than a weekly routine. But these episodes typically aren't very long because people don't have time every single day to consume a half an hour or an hour or even 2 hour podcasts. These are often like 5, 10, 20 minute max kind of episodes. And that's really kind of for short form content or kind of news related topics that would kind of not be as valuable if you heard it 2, 3 days late. So that's an important consideration there. There's totally pros and cons to each of these things. If you have too much content, people might get overwhelmed and kind of fall off and not really catch up. If you have not enough, people might look for other options for content. So I personally really like where we are. Social Snippet, we post twice a week. We feel like we're really consistent. People don't listen to all of our episodes, but they listen to the majority of them. Again, and the weekly is the most popular. So once a week is the most popular for our clients. But it totally depends on where you're at, how much time you have, and how you can show up the best and the most consistent. And that's where you're going to see the most results. Yeah, understand your audience preferences as well. Use analytics to decide this. If you noticing that the episodes aren't getting as many downloads when you post 2 a week, then maybe try 1 a week. If you miss a couple weeks and you notice that suffered your downloads, which it often does, maybe you're like actually can only do bi-weekly, and that's okay too. Um, so test lots of different things. And honestly, I would build a good content calendar too. For the social snippet, we use Excel. Um, we also use Trello, and those are our kind of our go-to favorite tools for kind of planning out the content, and making sure we have all the pieces in place. But I would make sure that this is written and it's not kind of just living in your head, your next podcast idea, or when you're going to record next. You kind of book it into your calendar, you have a schedule going for it, and you set yourself up for success that way. So, and to wrap up here, when should you post a podcast? How often should you release a podcast? It is however much you can promote it and whenever you can promote it. So pick that favorite day of the week, pick that most free day of the week. Be realistic about your goals. Shoot high, batch record, but also don't go too far ahead of yourself and try and do weekly episodes when you know that's not going to fit your schedule. And consider your audience and their patterns, their habits, their preferences. Are they really busy? Are they moms? Are they entrepreneurs who have really demanding jobs? Are they actually have a lot of free time and they need more content? Definitely consider those things as well and make a decision from there. Yeah, if you have more questions, contact us at the Social Snippet. We'd love to talk to you about launching a podcast, relaunching a podcast, or podcast strategy. Join the Social Business Club, another great place to get motivated with your community goals online. And we'll be back here really soon with another video. But talk to you soon.